Valerie Khayat. I'm joined by Dr. Tom Hutchinson from McGill University at the Whole Person Care Unit. Welcome, Dr. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you for joining me today. You use two terms, healing and curing.
Yeah.
You make a distinction between those two. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
So, curing is why most people come to the doctor. They have a problem, they want it fixed. It's exactly what we should be trying to do. At the same time, people who have any kind of serious illness need to go through a process of growth, I would say, in coming to terms with that, in making meaning of their life with this new problem. And sometimes that meaning is even more profound than they had before. It's that move from a sense of suffering and lack of integrity to feeling threatened, to a sense of wholeness, integrity, and inner peace. That kind of process, which you really do see, that's what we call healing.
This obviously speaks a lot to mindfulness, which is a very large part of your work. Can you explain what mindfulness is for those of us who are not familiar with the term? What does it mean to be mindful, and how does that play into the process of healing?
So, I mean, the word mindfulness is very old, but in North America introduced by John Kabat-Zinn, and he described it as moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness, focused in the present. That captures it, except I would say that I would add the word acceptance. Non-judgmental partly expresses that, but what we're talking is being totally okay with whatever's there before we move to the next step.
To fully embrace what is.
And fully accept. Not saying, I wish this hadn't happened. Part of you might still think that, but you realize, no, well, that's a useless thought. It has happened. The only useful thought is now, how can I fully be present to this, live this as fully as I can? And that made a huge difference.
Do you think that this speaks to the way that increasingly with technology in many different ways, just media, just the pace of everyday life now, how we are seeking, to a certain extent, distraction all the time? And how does that play into, the shift that we have to make? Or should we be making that shift long before we encounter disease or illness? Are there ways that we can begin to be mindful long before a crisis occurs?
Yeah.
How important is that?
Yeah, it's very important, I think. And you're absolutely right. I think we live in a very distracted world. And I'm part of that myself. I realize email is addictive. Yes, I think we live in a very distracted world. And I think maybe we can't get rid of all the technology, I suppose. No, we can't. But yes, I think it's very important for us to recognize that distraction, to recognize that it uses a different part of our brain, and that if we really want to be present to people, we need to let go of those distractions. Yeah, I think it's a big challenge, but it may also be the reason that mindfulness has become so popular now, because people recognize how distracted we are and how unsatisfactory that is.
It's a bit of an analogy for meditation, creating that space and pausing from what we are so engaged in all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has your perception of healing and illness changed over the years, as when you were a medical student and now?
Definitely, completely, I would say. I assumed that, this was just me, of course, but I assumed that both life and illness were a gradual process of deterioration. Without ever saying that, I think that's just what I assumed, that as you get older, when you lose things, and it just gets less and less good, and finally you die. And that when you get sick, the same kind of thing, you lose more and more. There's an element of that in terms of straight physical terms, but actually that's not, I think, what I see at all now. I think life is actually a process of growth And illness is a process of growth.
So does healing imply illness?
It's a good question. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think healing is a form of growth. And I think it's growth. And the funny thing about human beings, I think, is that when they grow most is when they're most challenged. So that healing and growth are not, healing, you might say, is growth in response to some great challenge or illness, but almost all growth is a response to some great challenge of some kind. Right. So, no, I don't think it has to be in response to illness. I'll give you an example of what I would say was healing for me that wasn't a response to illness. Okay. And that was going on sabbatical. I mentioned that having gone on a sabbatical, I kind of came back, was a big change. I thought, I need a change, and I had this opportunity to go to England. I thought it would be great. My family thought, no, not a good idea. I had 3 girls. They all said they're not going. They were like, 5 and 7 and 10. Mm-hmm. My wife said, well, I'm not sure it's such a good idea, Tom. And then I got a grant. And then the point was, I finally, with some help from other people, which was kind of the support you need, somebody said to me, Tom, if you ever want to go, so you have to go now, because there'll always be 1,000 reasons not to go. I decided to go. From that moment, I would say that was a healing, growing experience, It was new, it was great, it opened things up, it was the best year, maybe best year I've ever had, I'm not sure, but a great year, and my kids would say the same. I would say that was healing in response to maybe a new phase in life, taking a step, facing something. Yeah.
I can see you're very, we would say zen, you're very calm. How do you cultivate mindfulness in your own life?
I do meditate. I meditate twice a day, about 15 minutes or so. That's certainly helpful. I think teaching is very helpful, because when I tell these medical students, listen to yourself. When you're not sure what to do, slow down. Don't push ahead, that kind of thing. Then I'm also telling myself that. So I kind of hear myself, so it helps me to bring that into my life. So I think that as far as I can, and I'm not saying 100%, but I try and use my life as practice for doing what I'm telling the medical students to do.
Finally, my last question, where do you see the whole person care program and your work going? Where are we off from here?
So what I would like to see is that whole person care becomes the kind of mantra for how medical practice should be, how medicine should be practiced. It'd be great if that started at McGill, if it became just accepted that obviously we're dealing with persons, all medicine is personal, and we're always dealing with whole persons. And the sooner we kind of pay attention to that and learn how to do that better, we're using a whole set of energies and resources that we're underusing now, which is the energy and resources of the patients, but also the energy and resources of all the human beings who are in healthcare. So what I would like to see is medicine change in that direction, to start to think about how do we set up hospitals, how do we set up clinics, how do we organize practice, how do we train physicians, how do we train everybody else in medicine, so that we are actually delivering this whole person care. Because I think the focus of medicine, if it's purely on survival and fixing things, it's inadequate to what people really want. We need to help people survive and fix what can be fixed, but people's well-being, I think, is a crucial part of what our mandate is and should be.
Well, thank you so very much. It was such a pleasure speaking with you today, and our best wishes with all your endeavors and the whole person care. Thank you, Dr.
Valerie.
Hutchinson.
Thank you.